Okay, we're all live, and so I'll put up the promo. I thought I was getting some noise. You're missing this. It's coming in. That's what I was doing. Okay, try to find it. Sorry. Okay. Okay, so hello everyone. This is Joe Firestone. It's Thursday night and it's 9:03 p.m. for Real Progressives. And my guest for tonight is Rick Trevino, running in the Texas 23rd District. He's been here before, and Joy, has interviewed him earlier. And he is, I think, for us, a very, very good candidate. And we're going to start off by asking him to describe the context of the campaign before us. Okay, so go ahead, Rick.
Thanks, Joe. And thanks again for having me on. It's an honor. So the state of the race. So just so people understand what Texas 23 is, it's the largest congressional district in the United States outside of at-large districts like Montana. It also has the largest border between New Mexico and the United States of any state of any district in the union. So it's 85% rural and 70% Latino, most of Mexican American descent. And I'm right now currently taking on a DCCC, Emily's List back candidate, and Gina Ortiz Jones. She in this quarter raised over $700,000. And then you have me, who's backed up by Justice Democrats, Brand New Congress, Our Revolution, National Nurses United. So I'm the left candidate of the race, and I got here by beating a formerly DCCC back candidate and a candidate endorsed by the Castro brothers, Julian and Joaquin, who are very influential here in Texas. And he raised he raised and spent close to $500,000, spending close to $60 a vote. And I got in here, hustling, talking to thousands of people, knocking on a lot of doors, spending about $2.64 a vote. And Gina, now I'm in the runoff with, spent 10 times as much at about is that $20 a vote, something like that. So, and in Texas, you have to get 50% in the primary. If you don't, they get the top 2 performing candidates, and then they go into the runoff. So whoever gets the most votes this time, we're going on to take on Will Hurd, who currently holds the seat. And Will Hurd has beaten, this is now his second term. He recently beat Pete Gallego, who formerly held the seat. Pete Gallego was a centrist, moderate, and he beat him by like 3,000 votes. But Hillary Clinton won the district. So that's something that's important about this district. And it goes to show when the DCCC enters a race and starts pulling the strings, they can really undermine on the surface, a strong candidate. I mean, he was the only Latino in the race, and he lost by 3,000 votes. And if it's that close, it came to bad decision messaging and bad politics. Really, the DCCC doesn't run on anything. They don't allow the candidates to run on anything, and that has undermined Democratic performance in that district. So now I got to just take on one DCCC back candidate, and then it's onward to take on Will Hurd and win, and then finally get a lefty into Congress to represent working people.
Okay, with respect to Gina Ortiz Jones, she has certain positions which are very distinct from yours. I noticed in looking over the platforms that she has kind of half-hearted support for a Medicare for All program. She's mainly focused on the strengthening of the ACA, and she seems to offer only grudging support for single payer. It's very unconvincing when you look at the website. Okay. The other thing she is she's formerly an intelligence officer for the military, and she's connected to the Council on Foreign Relations as well. The connections there that are pretty important. The CFR is one of the centers of neoliberalism in the whole world, folks. That's what that is. Gina Ortiz Jones is a creature of the neoliberals. If you look at her positions on trade policy, she thinks that trade policy has to be tied in with our national security policy, and she basically is echoing, without saying so, that the justification for the TPP that was being given by Obama and by Clinton during the Obama years, the last part of the Obama years. If you recall, they began supporting the TPP, justifying it in terms of free trade. But when they started running into problems on that, because people were seeing that what was involved in the TPP was really a management treaty to safeguard the investments of all multinational corporations and protect them from foreign governments when they invested in foreign countries. Then the Obama administration shifted to emphasizing the foreign policy and military security advantages of passing the TPP. Gina Ortiz Jones is right in line with that kind of stuff. Now, she advocates for jobs in Texas, of course, but her advocacy of jobs is focused on investing in small business. And we know what that generally means as a practical matter is throwing small amounts of money at small business in hopes that it's going to trickle down to the workers, because the small business people are going to invest in workers. Another thing that Gina Ortiz Jones is interested in is the idea of making Texas more competitive with other states, attracting businesses from other states into Texas. And we know what that kind of race to the bottom actually leads to with respect to the overall economy of the United States. So from the point of view of us here, okay, at RP, Gina Ortiz-Jones is the enemy within the Democratic Party that Rick is running against to unseat. So I want you to understand how important this race is for us when you look at the context of it. Okay, and Gina Ortiz-Jones also, picture-perfect candidate, clean as can be in terms of her appearance and her looks, perfect Madison Avenue stuff on her website. Must have cost a pile of money which she had access to. So that's my take on her. I'd like to move now, though, to Rick's platform, okay, what he favors. So, Rick, I'll turn it back to you again.
Sure. Yeah, and something else about Gina, she, she was I think really part of that DC culture that is existing right now, that is dominating the Democratic Party, controlling the narratives, and not allowing the progressive movement really to be what it's really meant to be. Right? I think it's an evolution of the establishment that's very keen on what's popular now, and they want to do it on their terms. So, and I think what's undermining candidates like Gina ultimately is their connections to these PAC groups that a lot of people are now understanding that are really not. Well, their values don't really lie with the American people. They're more creatures of that world and creatures of DC and the donor class. So I am still like fundraising in a way that is allowing me to have a strong critique over those types of candidates. Seeing how I'm a grassroots funded candidate. But yeah, my platform is pretty straightforward. First, I believe that healthcare is a fundamental human right of all people. I support a Medicare for All healthcare program. I believe in that since 2012, and that's around the same time I found out about Bernie Sanders. So Bernie introduced me to a lot of these ideas that I'm fighting for. And I'm fighting for them because, this is what the American people has been wanting for a long time. They've shown support for these issues going back a few decades, except they haven't had a political party that would actually fight for those things. And that's why I jumped in the race to give this district an opportunity to elect someone from the working class. So Medicare for All is such an important issue because right now, all across the country, working people, vulnerable people, they're in tough spots because of our healthcare system. It's very expensive. A lot of people can't practically use it because of the deductibles, and then you have co-pays on top of that. A lot of plans don't fully cover dental and vision, which is inherent to being healthy, inherent to good health. So there's a lot of people that are pushed into debt and pushed into insecurity. And it's driven by the profit motive in the insurers and the hospitals and the pharmaceuticals. And this whole system really was cemented back in the 40s. I mean, in the McCann-Ferguson Act, it really set the stage for the insurers started acting like cartels, right? Controlling the state regulators, developing long relationships that have developed over decades. Now, our generation is inheriting this system that's so unfair, that leads to such terrible outcomes for people. And again, they're so powerful because, again, the way DC works, it's all about the money. It seems like a cliche thing to say, but it really comes down to that, the lobbying power of these industries, and also the fear-mongering. This is such a sensitive issue to the American people because it really literally means life and death for a lot of people. And they throw they throw in these false arguments to scare the American people from really allowing themselves to see really what's on the horizon. And the horizon is a society that treats you with respect and decency. And it's making it, and another thing, we're being surrounded by countries that have already done this. And that's something else. The American people are catching wind of the fact that other sophisticated economies and societies have done this. So that's like really the strongest issue that I'm running on. And I don't equivocate. I don't talk about the ACA or access and affordability. I mean, that's the language of the neoliberals. So, and then that's the thing about Gina. She's like simultaneously holds three positions. She's apparently for Medicare for all single payer, but also protecting the ACA and ACA reform. So like she could be for and against it simultaneously. And that's the thing. Whereas me, you just know where I'm at. I've been here from day one. I believe in a Medicare for all healthcare system. The ACA, especially for states like Texas, really didn't benefit anybody because it was susceptible to Republican obstruction. And that's exactly what they did. So the Medicaid, to be eligible for Medicaid in Texas, you have to be extremely poor. And a lot of people lecture me like, well, some people don't want to work because if they work, they're going to lose their benefits. Well, if Medicaid means life and death for you, and if you get a job that might change and affect your ability to get health care, it makes people make some very tough decisions. And
yes, and as long as you mentioned, the life and death issue, a few times, I would like to talk to that issue also, for a moment. I estimated the fatalities due to lack of coverage from 2009 to 2016 caused by the failure of the Democrats to pass a Medicare for All bill, H.R. 676, right at the beginning of 2009, when they could have passed it under reconciliation. And if Obama had gotten Harry Reid to get rid of the filibuster in early January of 2009, then Medicare for All could easily have been passed because they could have given away 8 of the blue doggy votes and still passed it.
That's right.
Okay, so the fatalities estimates that I have due to lack of coverage during that period were 356,000. Okay, in 2017, I estimate there was another 37,000, and thus far in 2018, 12,000 fatalities. The grand total over the period 2009 up to now then is 405,000 fatalities. Now, why? Why do we have these fatalities? Supposedly because in the run-up to the administration taking power in 2009, Obama supposedly became concerned over the loss of jobs that was going to occur in the health insurance industry if he went ahead and passed the Medicare for All back then, in 2009. So he and Max Baucus took it off the table at that time. But let's look at the trade-off. At that point, it would have saved about 450,000 jobs. Okay, so to save 450,000 jobs then, we gave away 405,000 lives. Well, what kind of trade-off of that is saving a job worth just about as much as saving a life? That's an insane trade-off. We need to end that kind of trade-off. And that means we have to keep in mind that we have to pass H.R. 676 without any implementation delay. And that speaks to Bernie Sanders' own policy right now. He's introduced a Medicare for All bill into the Senate that has a phased implementation over 3 years. Okay, it wouldn't be completely implemented till the 4th year. That's going to cost thousands of lives because he's delaying, because he wants to delay the implementation. That's in contrast to H.R. 676, which has no delay. It's complete implementation in the first year. So everybody needs to be clear on this. There's a trade-off of lives for jobs involved there. That has to be made clear to people. It is not a moral trade-off. It is not a righteous trade-off. It is a corrupt trade-off. It's not something we can allow. Okay, I'm sorry. I just had to say that.
No, but you're right. Like, there shouldn't be any really delay. We should be doing these things right now. And again, the state of affairs are a culmination of choices we make as societies, right? We could have resolved this a long time ago. We've had opportunities and windows to make it, but again, we haven't. But now we can. We really, and that's why, like the organizations that I'm endorsed by, like Branding Congress, Justice Democrats, they're backing up and supporting non-traditional candidates that are coming from the working class, and working class people are asking themselves. They're looking at both options in front of them, like the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. I mean, really, for the most part, those are the only games in town when it comes to federal policy. And both
Okay.
have failed the American people, especially when it comes to this issue. And when I think of the ACA, like it just is the most. It's like the whole individual mandate, taxing people for not and penalizing them for not purchasing insurance. It's like the most capitalist solution to this problem, right? It really is not creative, and it really isn't treating people with really respect, because like a lot of the arguments that you bring up that prevents Medicare fraud from happening, for example, the one that concern trolling about, people are gonna lose their jobs, right? The whole bloated bureaucracy and administrative aspect of healthcare that drives up costs, right? We can't get rid of that bloat that leads to poor health outcomes and confusion. Now, we can't let go of that, because it means jobs that, by the way, pay menial wages, low hours, no benefits themselves. So, like, these aren't A-OK quality jobs. These are jobs that do not provide stability or a pathway to the middle class, again, just so you know. So
Yeah, but it's also the other argument here, okay, that exists is that the only econometric study done for HR 676, which was done in 2008 and completed in the early part of 2009, shows a net gain of 2.5 million jobs from passing HR 676. There would not even be a loss of jobs. And also, due to the expansion, okay, of Medicare, many of those people from the health insurance industry who would be losing jobs there would be able to tie in to Medicare jobs, to federal jobs. So the loss of jobs argument is a fallacy, whichever way you look at it. It's just a red herring.
Yeah, but that's the thing. What they introduced this doubt, and again, the people that are doing this, they control the media. They can, most people don't have any other options of what media is given to them, right? So like, it's up to us, the candidates, to have this opportunity to talk to the American people about Medicare for all and these other ideas. Another issue that we're talking about my platform. Another issue that I'm a big supporter of is a living wage. And now I support a $15 living wage tied to inflation. Is $15 enough? No, not really. For a lot of places, it still isn't enough. So I think, but I think it's an issue that has wide grassroots supports all across this country, and we should leverage that, and then leverage it and take that momentum and make it better once we have that opportunity in Congress to really make it what it needs to be. But the whole idea that in America, that one job should be able to provide a good quality of life for people. If the most you can work legally at a job is 40 hours, well then, I don't think it's crazy and controversial to say that in America, the richest country again in the history of the world, that should, you shouldn't live in poverty. That the government should work to guarantee that, and should work in its power to kind of create the conditions to where people can have be able to experience the things that make life worth living, which is your friends and your family, your community. And a lot of people really work and work and work. Wages aren't providing them any really stability. It's not allowing them to buy the things that people build wealth off of, especially now. And I think that's why I'm really supporting the idea of a federal jobs guarantee. All the leverage right now is with the employers. For every job, there's 3 to 4 people competing for that job. So what does the employer do? It just finds a person that will take the worst deal. And that's who they pick. And that's just a very negative reality. And also, right now, our system, our capitalist system right now, there's only 2,000 billionaires in the world. And last year, they as a group became $750 billion richer. Something's wrong with the system itself. And that's why even if you give someone health care, even if you give someone a $15 living wage, even if you give someone, housing, we still have a society and an economy that really funnels everything to the top. And what are we going to do to confront that? And I think that's what we're going to need politicians to kind of, I think anybody, if shown those facts, realizes something is wrong. Something is really wrong here, that there's no way a wage job is going to provide anything but insecurity in your life. And that's why it's not just about a $15 living wage. It's about having an honest discussion about our economy. We live in this capitalist system, and that's all that is allowed to be talked about. But I think my generation is really looking towards other alternatives, worker co-ops, things like that. Trying to reimagine a new economy, a new society, because the one that we're inheriting doesn't look too good, because we're watching our parents try to retire with dignity. I've gone all over this district watching people try to retire in the system, and it doesn't look good. And people are really scared and worried all the time, and we're supposed to just accept this without demanding anything from the system ourselves. Well, I'm demanding that we have a living wage.
Okay, and you're demanding also that we have a federal job guarantee which provides a living wage and good fringes for anyone who wants a job. Yeah. And so the question I have for you, at this point is, $15 an hour may be a living wage in your congressional district in Texas, but it's not a living wage up in New York, or in Los Angeles. It may not even be a living wage in Dallas. So what do we do about that?
Well, I think what you could do, at least at the state level, is that allow municipalities to set their own wages appropriate to their communities. I think that's something that you really don't.
You can do that, but what you could also do, but quite easily, I think, is to set a living wage, which is a base for, let's say, the cheapest area in the country, CPI-wise. Okay, and then what you could do is adjust, the living wage according to the CPI variations, across the region. So, for example, if the minimum living wage was $15 an hour in the United States, then the maximum could be as much as $30 an hour, depending on the cost of living adjustment as you go across the country. And this would create a situation where people would not be tempted to move from one area to another, because in their area they don't have a living wage. So it wouldn't be forcing people to migrate if you set up a system like that. And at the federal level, it's very easy to set that up. It's just according to regional differences in the CPI.
Yeah, I imagine, and that's the thing. If I go on to DC with this opportunity, I'm not going to stop myself from being creative with this idea. Right now, I say a $15 living wage because all across this country, there is real grassroots movement that's organized around that idea. So you use that again as the starting point to introduce new possibilities, right? So right now we have to, instead of just going in and trying to rebrand and start new ideas, I think you go in for what's built right now and then build on that, because really, you're right, the federal government can do these things, right? And you're right, a $15 might go a long way here in Texas, but it's not going to go that far in New York or San Francisco or these urban areas where, there was a report that said something like there's not one city in the United States right now where a minimum wage can get you like a 2-bedroom apartment.
Yes, it's amazing and disgraceful also.
It really is. It really is disgusting. And, I recently read this book by Matthew Desmond called Evicted, one that Pulitzer Prize, and he really embedded himself in Milwaukee to kind of, see housing insecurity firsthand. And that's something else that we have to look at too. I wish politics was as simple as people wish, that it seems like on TV, you just have one idea and it's going to make everything better. But Like housing is such a integral part of people's lives. Without real stable housing, you can't really build on anything. And a lot of people's housing rent is going up immediately. So there goes all those wage gains. So we really have to find a way to control that, the continued rising cost of rent. And I think Desmond outlined some good policies that the federal government could do. But I'm going in there with these new ideas to kind of change the system itself, because I'm going in there not saying that all we need is a little bit more diversity and America is better. Like, no, like our system itself, like our economy, our society has to be reformed. And our economic system right now is producing outcomes that don't favor most people, 99%. That's why that whole idea of the 99% is so powerful.
Okay, so one important feature of the job guarantee program is that the jobs would be created for public purpose by local communities based on their assessments of their needs in their community, and would be funded by the federal government with salaries paid directly to the participants, and some of the overhead costs, or all the overhead costs, depending on the situation, would be paid to the organizations that would be running the programs decided upon by the local communities, with the participation of the job guarantee members themselves. Now, they would have a hand in defining their own jobs at the local level. But the kinds of enterprises that would be involved would be nonprofit enterprises, new social enterprises formed by the members of the job guarantee programs themselves, cooperatives, and there might be an overlap between these two categories. And these jobs and these endeavors would be non-competitive with the market sector or the regular government job sector. The point is, the job guarantee, as envisioned, would create a whole new sector of the economy which barely exists today, this social value sector. So I like to talk about it in terms of a market value sector, a social value sector, and a government value sector, three separate sectors, of the economy, and the job guarantee as building up the middle sector based on the idea of paying a living wage to everybody who wants a job in that particular sector in order to help to take care of our social needs and our public needs, which the market does not meet. So that's basically sort of a statement of purpose for the job guarantee program.
Yeah.
The program would facilitate transition to a Green New Deal with green jobs, but also many other jobs that the locals feel they need. Elder care jobs, child care jobs, jobs assisting women who just have had a baby and would like to go out to work without having to wait too long for their purpose, and need some help for childcare during that period. And this would be the kind of program that's available in France, actually, right now to mothers there, and in some of the other European countries, which we haven't even conceived of here. But that's also a kind of job that might be in the program. The main idea is that the local communities would be creating jobs as they see fit, as they conceptualize the jobs. And they would be creating new jobs and new categories of jobs based on the inventiveness of the local communities themselves. And we see this as a way of revitalizing congressional districts like your own, which have so many poor people in them, where the economy is fairly dead to the globalization trends that we have gone through. through the job guarantee program, the federal government, in league with the local authorities, could counter the globalization trends and wake up the local economies all across the United States.
And in my district, I'm just thinking about like what type. Like we had a federal jobs guarantee. Like what would that look like in my district, and what kind of work would be done, and something that's you find all around the frontera area. That's the border area of 23. Are these you have small cities, but around them there are these colonias. They've been there a long time. They just kind of sprouted up out of nowhere, really, and they themselves, because of certain laws and loopholes and counter loopholes, they just kind of grew and grew. A lot of these places don't have big roads. They have.
You're starting to have a microphone problem again. I'm not sure why.
But a lot of these colonias, they don't have big roads.
It's getting more serious. Might be you have to be a little further from the microphone instead of closer.
That better?
Now there's still all of a sudden, this was not happening at all until maybe 30 seconds ago or 5 seconds ago. So something changed. I don't know what.
How's it now?
Good.
Okay. Well, going to the federal jobs guarantee, what kind of work? Not so bad.
Yeah, still not working.
Let me try this. Is that better? Is that better?
Not better yet.
Want me to give it a shot again?
No. We're trying to find out what's changed.
I don't know. Maybe it's a connection. Sorry.
Okay. Let's go on and see how we manage. Okay, I'm getting some feedback at this one too, so I'm going to adjust my sound also in hopes of healing the problem. Okay, can you still hear me?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I can.
Okay, great. And you sound better now also.
Okay.
Okay, so continue, please.
Well, really, what I would, just to make it quick, the federal jobs guarantee could allow people to rebuild the colonias, a lot of areas that have been historically underrepresented, bring a real, infrastructure, healthcare opportunities. A lot of these places have been abandoned. And politically, when it comes to these big federal positions, this district has been gerrymandered to such an extent that Will Hurd doesn't really have to interact with any of the district and still get elected. And a lot of the major, voting sources are these big cities, San Antonio, El Paso. And with the places that get left behind is the 85% of the district that's rural. And these colonias really do need a real revitalization, and a federal jobs guarantee is that idea that could really spark that, right? There's a lot of work to be done, especially in my district. And it's something else about my district. It's so large geographically, and it has, it has so much potential. But what you could do, you talked about a Green New Deal. Well, the vision I have for that district is that we invest in clean energy jobs, and we need to aggressively move away from fossil fuels. I think we all believe in anthropogenic change. We know what's on the horizon there. And our generation really has to confront the reality that that's the challenge on our hands. Not only we have to deal with all the global destabilization, neo-fascism, all that stuff, globalization, all that. We also have to deal with climate change. So to develop that new economy, the federal jobs guarantee could develop that infrastructure, because in my district, there's so much land that we could do solar and wind, hydroelectric and geothermal, and any new green energy revolution. I want my district to really embrace it. We have a lot of opportunity because of our size. We're not a small urbanized district. Like there's a district here in San Antonio called District 20. It's all the land has been accounted for and spoken for. You can't do anything with it. Our district, on the other hand, has all this potential. So a federal jobs guarantee, I think, is exactly what's needed to make that vision a reality.
And so do I. So do I. Okay. You have also a strong program in the education area as well. Can you tell us about that, please? Because that's an important part of your overall platform, I think.
Yeah, well, just a little background myself. I'm a teacher. That's really the life experience that forged the man that I am. And I taught in something called a Promised Neighborhood. It was part of Barack Obama's Promised Neighborhood initiative that identified neighborhoods and zip codes in crisis. That's where I taught in one of those. And I saw really the culmination of federal policy like redlining practices and really uh, uh, communities that don't have much economically, just very menial wage jobs, tertiary economies, right? And when it comes to education, a lot of the problems of a community are expected to be solved by a high school. Really, a lot of now you have the development of things called community schools, which actually are pretty cool ideas, but it shows how much need is in the community. And what community schools do is they provide not just education, but social, financial, and health services for the community. It's kind of like a hub because it's an institution in people's lives that they're comfortable interacting with. A lot of people went to the school there. They're comfortable interacting with it again, going back. Their kids might go to school there. Their friends might go to school there or work there. So community schools also show that they're turning into this because of the need. So I really want to help schools really just do the mission that they were always intended to do, was educate the population. So that's why I think a federal jobs program, living wage, healthcare for all, provides us stability in the communities to allow schools to do what they're really supposed to do. Now, also, if we're just talking about high school, what we have to do is move away from standardized testing, which is a practice that was created with complete racial bias and really ugly ideas about women and race. Yeah. And we're still as a society using these metrics as to kind of justify federal allocations of funds and also describing what communities are. And now in Texas, we have an A through F system, which is so ludicrous because, I mean, it's such a crude description of what's going on in a school. Because I was in a school that was labeled a D, but if you saw all the effort and amount of human effort that was put into making these kids, try to be successful on a test that's so unfair. So we have to move away from No Child Left Behind, standardized testing, and fully fund our public schools and help states do this. And like in our state of Texas, because of the GOP and Democrats, this is a new era. You're talking about neoliberalism. Charter schools have loved this era of neoliberalism because the race to the top was a Barack Obama initiative. It laid out $3.5 billion to charter developments. And all these charters have done is taken away the population of public schools and also falsely offered communities an option that they say they've solved the problems of education. Like we figured out education. That's such a bogus idea too, because if you really look at it historically and put it in context, public schools are doing great in their outcomes. They're teaching more kids are getting educated. And the thing is, it's like, even if kids do play by the rules and they pass all their tests and they do well in school, the world's about to treat them the same. At least for the school, the kids that I taught. And I thought it was so unfair that we tell our kids that all you have to do is play right in this era, in this little moment in your life, and everything. America's ready to celebrate you.
Yes.
And it's so mean, it's so cruel. And it forces them either to take a lot of debt to go to school or not and live a life at or below poverty. And that's why at least I support a free public colleges, universities. And it's scandalous the amount of money that outside of endowments that universities have in their coffers right now, accruing interest. And they have all this money because they're charging an arm and a leg to go to school. And they have all this extra money that's just making them richer, where they themselves should be using it for debt relief. So don't tell me.
And meanwhile, the state schools are being starved for money compared to the money that's going to the private schools. Okay, and your program okay, of free schools from pre-K but through universities would include the graduate schools and the professional schools as well, right?
Yes, sir. I think we have to look at, you know, we have to look at our citizens as investments. You know, there's so much human capital that is lost because of the way we structure our education system. But not everybody, if given a fair opportunity to actualize into the person that you really want to be, people won't just all want to be doctors. No, they'll be able, and also we create a society that allows them actually to do the things they love. You know, this could really work out for people, because like it's not just about
only for people. It can work out for all of us, because it creates communities that are happier communities where people can live in a more peaceful state and contented state, and can realize themselves in terms of what they want to be like. Education is so important for that. And it's so important also for strengthening democracy and civic participation. It's important for all those reasons. And we used to believe that here in America, and we no longer do because of this neoliberal bull crap, which we've got to get.
And my opponent, Gina Ortiz-Jones, she just says, like, I support, you know, access to higher education. And again, this vagueness where, like, why is it so hard to just say what you mean? Like, I want free college and university, free public college and universities to anybody that really shows themselves that they want to do it. Other countries do it. Why is that so hard?
The reason why it's so hard for her is because she doesn't want to say that. She only wants to talk vaguely about, access.
Yeah.
Well, we know from Hillary Clinton what access means.
Yeah.
It means bullshit.
Yeah, because we all have access, but they have the right to say no to us, right? Because we don't have, $80,000. But, I myself have benefited from higher education. I just got my master's to be a principal in education leadership from SUNY University. And really for me, like, those experiences are so enriching. And more people should have an opportunity to do that and not turn their back and make decisions because of money. Because some things, money makes us cautious. And it really doesn't allow people to take those risks that really will change their life and bring some happiness into this whole equation, right? And I like how you mentioned happiness, because I think that's something that we forget. It's okay that we ask. It's okay that we, in our mind, want a society and an economy that can make us happy. That should be an outcome that we go for. And moral, yeah.
After all, the Declaration of Independence says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We have a right to pursue happiness, and we have a right to force our government to facilitate our pursuit, of happiness.
And just imagine also that instead of spending this trillions of dollars, as we have this millennia, on war, if we actually spent those resources on just trying to make a better country for ourselves. And right now, as we speak, Donald Trump is being cheered on by both Republicans and Democrats to do this, looking straight into the camera and egging them on, bomb Syria, as if that's going to solve things. And it's like this perpetual war, this economy that's based on war. It really is like you said, it's immoral. We need to make a moral economy too. And it really hurts. It really hurts to see what's going on.
Those wars. I mean, again, it's a trade-off, of lives. Now, in many cases, it's not simply the lives of our people over there fighting, which is the major problem. The major problem is all of the people, all the casualties we have caused, all the people we have killed because we're over there fighting. The estimates say that 1 million Iraqis lost their lives. For what? So we could displace Saddam Hussein because somebody made the corrupt case, which turned out to be untrue, that he was behind the 9/11 attacks. And they wouldn't even wait for the results of an investigation by the UN and other observers that were trying to be impartial in that situation. They went ahead and bombed and had the war anyway, and they killed more than 1 million people in that particular war. And that doesn't account for the Afghanistan casualties either. We have to ask ourselves, was that really worth it? Can we call ourselves a moral and decent people when we cause those horrendous casualties overseas for nothing? I mean, for God's sake, we lost only 3,000 people that day, okay, in 9/11. Sure, that was terrible, but it's only 3,000 people. We have no right to trade off 3,000 of our own people for over 1 million of the people of some other nations. I mean, that's just morally corrupt.
And I think, like, just to put it all in context, like, I wish our country and our people really were let, and our leaders really let our people know our history in the Middle East. We overturned we intervened and did a coup d'etat in Iran, in Iraq. The CIA backed the Ba'ath Party that led to the ascent of Saddam Hussein. We played both sides in the Iran-Iraq War in the 80s. The Persian Gulf endeavor, and then what we're doing in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Yemen, in Somalia. We have a global war, and this has been the policy of the United States, to intervene militarily, and the only people that ever get affected by our policy in the Middle East are the civilians. They're the ones that suffer. And we do have blood on our hands in the Yemen conflict, what we did in Iraq. I mean, the fact that Paul Wolfowitz, Donald Rumsfeld, Dick Cheney, and George W. Bush haven't been, put in front of a court and held to account for lying to the American people and putting our brave men and women who joined the United States federal government because they want to be, they love their country. We have to respect that patriotism. We all love our country. And then for them to put their life on the line then, and then for our leaders to put them in such terrible positions, ask them to do terrible things.
Which they did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like what happened in Fallujah.
And now we force them to carry that kind of burden through their lives. They have to carry that burden.
No,
and Bush doesn't carry that burden. He goes off and paints some pictures somewhere.
But really what you're looking at is like real blowback. And now just to see the people that are surrounding Donald Trump, John Bolton, he's been a hawk ever since he's been on the scene. While the Iran nuclear deal was about to be signed, he was still proposing the United States bomb Iran. Mike Pompeo has entertained right-wing conspiracy theories. He's been pushing for Iran. They're also both hawks against Russia. So who knows how this is all going to pan out. And then you had Gina Haspel, the next potential CIA director. And I've said this before. She literally tortured human beings, ran a CIA black site. Like, look at what's going on, and the fact that, isn't it crazy that there are no demands on our candidates like me to have any opinion on this, and the fact that me, the teacher, is the one that's bringing up these issues because I care about them, and I know people will care about them if they just heard about them, that the person that literally comes from the Defense Intelligence Agency too isn't bringing them up or isn't providing that expertise, right, or background and chiming in on this super important situation. We are rolling the dice again with nuclear weapons. In the 60s.
Of course, the opponent you have in the primary is just going to rubber stamp everything based on her background. She's not going to fight against this. She's going to find it all completely appropriate.
Well, actually, let me tell you actually what happened. It was pretty interesting. We were on a little radio show, and then I said because Will Hurd comes from the CIA agency as well. Isn't that interesting that this rural district has so many people from the intelligence community running to represent it, right? Isn't that weird? Okay, anyways, I asked her about her positions on the things I was just talking about, right? And she called it disrespectful that I would assume that she shares positions with Will Hurd, as if that's such a big thing. But the reality is the Democratic Party does share the same positions on military foreign policy as Will Hurd and the GOP. That's the thing. Like,
also, if she doesn't share those positions, then what is her position?
exactly. I would like to know.
Made her position clear at all. The only way we can evaluate her position is based on her background and the groups that she's affiliated with. We know what the position of those groups are. We know they never question what the Trump administration is doing. They never question the Russiagate fantasy that's going on right now. So what are we to believe about her? She never says anything different. She's not coming out in support of Tulsi Gabbard, is she?
Well, that's the thing. Like, she and other Democrats running all over the country aren't being asked by the media as well. Like, it's not an issue in this moment, which is so weird because it's the biggest story going on right now. And it has been. I mean, like the specter of a regime change has been there. And that's the only thing the United States knows how to do, even though it doesn't work. I mean, look at Iraq, look at Libya. There are right now currently 4 failed states in that area. And I just don't see it working out, right? Just me. But anyways, like, if that's what we end up doing.
I'd love to go on with this, because I know you have so much to say on this topic, and a lot of other topics also. But we have only a few minutes left, and I want to get to the question, of how are we going to pay for it? Because you have a lot of programs here, that you want to pass, and those programs are going to be expensive. Now, I do want to explain one thing, which is I don't think that we have had nearly enough deficit spending to maintain a full employment, private sector type of economy. And when I say that, what I have in mind is that there are leakages of demand from our economy each year to private savings and to foreign trade. And those leakages probably amount to 12% of our GDP. We know that to maintain a full employment type of economy, then, that the federal government has to roughly deficit spend 12% of GDP, which right now means that there should be a deficit of something like 2.2 trillion per year to 2.4 trillion per year. And CBO came out with the shocking news, a few days ago, that our deficits are going to go up to 850 billion. Isn't that really terrible? And the truth is, it's way short of what we need to spend. But it's bad to pay for this deficit spending that we need in any way that associates the deficits with either increased taxes or debt financing, because there's a political problem in each of those things. There's a whole industry in Washington which is devoted to advocating for austerity spending by the federal government and for reducing a deficit because horrors, the national debt is so high. But there is a way to finance federal spending. And I have to say here, just kind of insert, that it is the case that really taxes and bond revenues do not actually fund federal spending. But we have no time to go into that argument here. All I want to do is point out there is an alternative way to finance, and I call that overt congressional financing, OCF, which is basically Congress ordering the Fed to pay for all of the programs that it appropriates and to pay down all of the national debt that falls due during the period of an appropriation, during the period of a CR bill. Okay, so what I want to do is to put up now just a few graphics which depict this. The first of the graphic I'm going to go solo with, and you can see what it says is your program looks expensive. How are you going to pay for them? And the simple answer is, we're Congress. We'll just order the Fed to give Treasury the money. Now, how does Congress have the authority to do that? It does, based on Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. The Fed is Congress's creature. They were delegated the authority to create the reserves, the additions to Treasury spending account balances that the Treasury needs to spend for these very large programs, because it's not practical for it actually to use paper currency to pay for these programs. And while coins could be used, that's a theoretical matter that I don't want to go into in this particular program. So let me go now to another graphic, which is a little more complicated answer to this question if you have more than 10 seconds to answer it. Okay, and what I want to do is, your programs look expensive. How are you going to pay for them? And the answer is, oh, that's the same answer I just gave, so I didn't mean to put that up again. So let me put this into the broadcast now and have this go solo. Okay. And the answer is easy. When we pass a spending bill, we'll just order the Fed to immediately add new dollars to the Treasury's account to pay for new spending and repaying debt as we go along until it is eventually gone. Because, of course, it would be if you appropriated in this way, added this language to appropriations bills, then all the debt would be paid off over 30 years, because the largest term debt we have is currently, I believe, a 30-year debt. And so that's why it would take all of 30 years to pay it off. But the truth is that $4 trillion of it would be paid off within 6 months, because that's a whole bunch of short-term debt that we have that would be falling due in 6 months' time. So the public could see within 6 months' time a drastic reduction in the national debt because of this particular program. Okay, so let me put up now yet another one. I guess I gotta get rid of some of these if I'm going to put that up. Let me manage this here before we close. Okay, this is a little more detailed piece that answers the same question. What I do? Sorry, I'm having a little trouble manipulating these different alternatives with the BeLive program. Let me get rid of this. And let me get rid of. Okay, anyway, I'm going to move to the bottom line of this. I actually have 3 of these, but actually 4 of these, but I'll only be able to show 3 here because somehow I lost track of the 4th. But here's the 4th. It's an actual approximation to the language that would be put into a congressional bill in order to have this happen. And it says, upon passage of this appropriations bill, the Federal Reserve is directed to fill the Treasury spending account that the New York Federal Reserve, with the addition to its reserve balance necessary to spend this appropriation. And then the other half of the language says, in addition, the Federal Reserve is directed to fill the Treasury spending account with the additions to the Treasury reserve balances necessary to repay all outstanding debt instruments, including principal and interest, as they fall due for the fiscal year of this appropriation. So that's all the language you need to put in as boilerplate, okay, as a boilerplate in the appropriations bills and CR bills to make this a reality. It's not complicated at all in terms of the legislation. In other words, you pass an appropriations bill, which is an appropriation, let's say, for Medicare for all, and for Social Security, and for the job guarantee, and all the other things that you want to pass. And right at the end of that bill, these money bills, okay, you add this clause with the two sentences, okay, right at the end. And that takes care of any debt problem, and that takes care, okay, of any illusion that it's taxes and bonds that are paying for federal spending. In fact, one of the most important purposes of doing things in this way is to make it clear to people that it's not taxes and it's not bond revenues that actually fund federal spending. It's Congress and the orders of Congress and the rules made by Congress that fund federal spending. So if there are austerity policies, that's the fault of Congress and Congress alone. If there is a national debt, it's the fault of Congress alone. It is not anybody else's fault. Okay? This makes that very, very clear going forward, and also makes clear that Congress has the solution. Once it's clear to people within 6 months that there was always a false debt problem that could have been easily solved by Congress, then all the resistance due to the fear of the national debt that existed before then goes away. Okay, and progressives are free to pass things like the federal job guarantee and a Green New Deal and a Medicare for All bill and all the other nice things we want the American people to have. So that's really the last thing that I want to teach you. And basically what I want to say also is, if you pass OCF, okay, and you also take care of a federal job guarantee, then people like me who have certain beliefs about fiscal policy and how it should be carried out would be very supportive of you, okay, right down the line. That's really all we need to have done.
Well, that when I was on with Joy, people have turned me on to modern monetary theory, and kind of educated me on it. They said it was right up my alley, and everything I've heard about it, it makes a lot of sense. And I think it is providing a pathway to fully fund the needs of our society. I think right now you see just the creation of all this spending capability by the Congress right now when it comes to things that they think they need. For example, the $1.3 trillion nuclear weapon renovation. Somehow we have the money to do that, but we don't have the money to, send kids to college for free for a year, or, fully fund our healthcare systems and rebuild our roads and on and on and on. So obviously the power to spend and to lies with the Congress. And we have, I think MMT is allowing people like me a way to, figure out how to create that vision of America that we want. And I've been very encouraged by running in this. You meet new people, you meet new ideas, and it just seems like I was already embracing a lot of these things, like a federal jobs guarantee, the concept of a living wage, and housing as a right, and Medicare for all. This is just that other missing piece that at the moment I'm investing a lot of time understanding fully. I appreciate, Joseph, you inviting me on, and everybody out there that's helped me out, getting abreast with MMT. But I think that's what's cool is now that because neoliberalism, because the Democrats and Republicans have failed us, really, we are looking for alternatives and solutions to the problems that we have now. People are asking, why do things have to continue to be this way if they're so lousy? And it's allowing us to be creative, and I think I represent that willingness to evolve, to benefit working class folks. And that's why I ran. If you guys want to help out, for those who are still watching or watch later, go to rickford23.com. You could send a small donation. You could jump on Justice Democrats as a dialer that you could do some phone banking for, because the only way I get to implement these things is if I get there, right? And I need help from people all across the state. And but thank you again for this opportunity.
Okay, and but thank you again for joining us. There is one thing I wanted to cover, which we didn't get a chance to cover, and that was your views on getting money out of politics. And I know you have very strong views on that. I wanted to go over them, but we won't have time, unfortunately. But after the program, is over, I want to send you some ideas, that I have about that. Have you run across the exceptions clause to the Constitution?
Yeah, I don't know it off the top of my head.
Okay, that's in Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution. Now, I'm going to send you a post on it. And the post is about the problem of actually getting money out of politics and why that clause is extremely important in getting that done quickly. I mean, quickly, as soon as progressives take over Congress. Okay?
Yes, sir.
So after this is over, I'm going to give you that information. Okay. So for everybody else, thank you very much for coming. And I want you to remember that there is a Patreon page for Real Progressives, and we'd appreciate a donation. And I have a Patreon page also, and I'd appreciate a donation. So you're getting asked for donations, and we know that you will do what you can do, and we trust you to do that. We know the kind of economy we all are living in, and the shortcomings we have, but we all know we're also very committed to the cause, and that we'll do what we can. So thank you again for coming and for giving us your support by watching. So good night, and thank you again for coming, Rick. And I hope we can do this again fairly soon. Okay?
Yes, sir.
And we'll make arrangements to do that. Okay, bye.